A father puts on a clown costume for his son's birthday party, but he soon realizes he can't take it off. Little by little, he starts losing his humanity until he transforms into a demonic clown. The movie begins with Meg telling her friend Denise that she's pregnant, but she asks her not to tell her husband, Kent. Meg gets a phone call saying the clown won't be able to make it to the party, so she calls Kent to ask what they should do. Kent starts looking for a costume and ends up finding the perfect clown suit in a drawer. Later, he arrives at his son's birthday party dressed as a clown and puts on an amazing show for the kids. After the party, Kent tucks Jack into bed. His wife Meg congratulates him on his performance. She wants to reward him, but tells him they should take a shower first. Instead, Kent starts to watch TV and falls asleep. The next morning, Kent wakes up much later than expected. Meg tells him he has to take Jack to school, so he has no choice but to go out dressed as a clown, and everyone looks at him strangely. Even his coworkers give him strange looks, but he explains that he only did it for his son. Kent wipes the makeup off his face, but he can't take off the clown suit. He can't even remove the wig or the red nose. When Kent explains the situation to Meg, she suggests using some tools, but when she tries to pull off the nose, she literally tears off part of his skin. And since they don't feed their dog, he eats the nose like it's a piece of chicken. Determined to find a solution, Kent looks for information about the previous owner of the house where he found the suit, only to discover that the man has already died. However, he finds the phone number of the man's brother, Herbert. Kent calls him to ask about the suit, and Herbert immediately tells him not to touch it. But once Kent mentions that he's already wearing it, Herbert offers to help him take it off. Kent drives out to meet Herbert, who claims he can remove the suit easily. Herbert tells him just how old the costume really is. He explains that it's possessed by a demon that feeds on children. Kent suddenly starts feeling dizzy because Herbert slipped something into the tea he drank. When Kent wakes up, he finds himself strapped to a table as Herbert tries to decapitate him, claiming it's the only way to stop the demon. Kent manages to break free at the last second, but not before suffering a deep wound to his shoulder. Kent returns home and tells Meg that someone tried to kill him. He wants her to go to the police with him because he knows nobody's going to believe a guy dressed as a clown. But of course, everyone looks at him like he's a complete freak, and they believe him even less when they see Herbert in Kent's car. So Dave demands that Kent take off the suit, only to end up with a broken wrist. Kent drives off with Herbert to take him to the police, but he suddenly starts vomiting because his hunger is becoming unbearable. To make things worse, Herbert starts choking him from the back seat, which causes a small crash. Herbert is badly injured in the accident, so he tells Kent to end his own life. At that moment, Kent spots some children and almost gives in to his hunger, but instead he runs into the woods, where he comes across a group of campers and ends up biting one of the children without even realizing it, but then he lets the poor kid go. By now, he's completely messed up and looks like he's turning into something else. Later, he runs into a boy named Billy, who notices that Kent looks hungry. Kent ignores him and locks himself inside an apartment, but Billy shows up at his door with some cereal. Kent ignores him again, but he knows he can't keep living like this, so he calls his wife Meg, who begs him to come home, and Kent simply says goodbye before trying to take his own life. However, when he pulls the trigger, all that comes out is a strange substance, and he survives. He even goes to a store and buys a couple of chainsaws to see if they can finally do the job. But just as he's about to go through with it, Billy shows up and gets impaled by one of the chains. And since the boy is already dead, Kent has no problem making him his next meal. Meanwhile, Meg has been searching for Kent at every property he's been trying to sell until she finally tracks him down at the apartment where he's been hiding. Meg tries to open the door, but Kent doesn't want her to see him like this. She then tells him they'll figure everything out together and finally reveals that she's pregnant. Kent opens the door and goes home with her, while we see that nothing is left of Billy except his bones. Once they get home, Kent asks Meg to chain him up because he can feel something inside him is taking control. Desperate, Meg starts reading the book about the suit that Kent brought home the other day. Inside, she finds a photograph of a man wearing the suit, along with information about Herbert. So Meg goes to the hospital to ask him how they removed the suit from the man in the picture. However, Herbert refuses to tell her anything and insists that he's the only one who can help Kent. Meg returns to the house where Kent found the suit and discovers a chair that looks like someone was tortured there. She also finds an old camera containing footage of a strange creature. At the same time, some kids make fun of Jack because his father is a clown, so Jack bites one of them before running back home. There, Kent starts talking to him, but his voice has become incredibly disturbing. Even so, Jack goes down to the basement, just like his father asked. Kent notices that Jack has been crying, so Jack tells him some kids were bullying him, and even says the ringleader's name is Colton. Kent then asks Jack if he knows how to cut through chains, but we cut back to Meg, who's just returned home after being told that Jack had left school. She finds Jack safe and sound, but Kent is no longer in the basement. It turns out the clown didn't appreciate anyone picking on Jack, so he went after Colton and ate him without thinking. Meanwhile, Meg prepares to get Jack away from all of this, but their dog is also out of control because he ate the clown's nose the other day. Meg is completely helpless and nearly loses her life, but Herbert appears and put the little dog down. Meg finally decides to trust Herbert, so he tells her more about the suit. The costume ended up in his shop by chance, and his brother put it on to entertain a group of children with cancer. However, he couldn't take it off, and once he started turning into this creature, he gave the demon exactly what it wanted. He went to the hospital and allowed it to feed on 5 children, and that's how he finally got rid of the suit. It's not explained how Herbert's brother died, but the important part is that the only options are letting 5 children die or decapitating poor Kent. But since Meg refuses to lose her husband, they agree to capture him and keep looking for another solution. Meg leaves Jack at her father's house before heading to Colton's home to look for Kent, only to realize that he is already dead. They suspect Kent came to this place because it's full of children, so they both go there to search for him. But since Herbert looks like he escaped from a mental institution, Meg decides to search for Kent on her own. But since she can't find him anywhere, she heads back, only to discover that Herbert has disappeared. Meanwhile, a boy is looking for his little brother James because their mother said it's time for them to leave. When he finally finds him, Kent is just about to have his next meal. But for some reason, he lets James go and attacks the other boy instead. James gets away completely unharmed, but everyone soon spots the other boy's severed arm, sending the entire crowd into a panic. Meg knows this has to be her husband's doing, so she starts searching for him alongside Herbert. They eventually reach what looks like an indoor play area, where they find Kent completely disoriented and no longer himself. Meg tells Kent that Herbert is going to help find a cure, but Herbert suddenly lunges at him with a very different plan in mind, so the clown slams him with the axe. At this point, the clown is completely in control. He tells Meg he'll give her husband back if she brings him another child. Of course, Meg refuses to do such a bad thing, but the clown tells her he'll be waiting at their favorite place. Just then, the police arrive. Meg slips out through the back door, leaving Herbert as the prime suspect behind all the mess. As Meg leaves, she sees a large group of children and briefly considers taking one of them, but then the child's mother shows up. Just as she's about to leave, a little girl appears. She can't find her mother and asks Meg to take her home. Meg drives for a few minutes until they reach what the girl believes is her house, but they've arrived somewhere else, and Meg leaves the little girl outside the car so the clown can take her. Meg changes her mind and unlocks the door, but a police officer suddenly appears and orders her not to move. Meg drives away anyway because she realizes the clown may have gone after her son. Meanwhile, Meg's father goes to her house looking for her and finds blood stains and bones on the floor. Shortly after, Meg arrives and scolds her father for coming there. At that moment, the clown kills Meg's father. Meg runs desperately for her life, but the clown catches up to her immediately and starts attacking her stomach. Meanwhile, Jack tries to escape, but he can't get the door open. Meg slashes the clown's throat, but he throws her so hard that she loses consciousness. The clown is only moments away from catching Jack, but Meg wraps a chain around his neck and manages to hold him down. The clown struggles to break free and ends up hurting himself, until Meg lands one final blow that completely tears his head off. And that's how the movie ends. Kent is gone forever, but the clown costume awaits for its next victim.